Our next presentation will be Iselin, who will be showcasing her documentary project that she is doing. And afterwards, we will have a Q&A immediately with Iselin and with Lilith from Peon. So, for Iselin, thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Hello, Iceland. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to say I'm a bit nervous, but it will probably pass. Since 2021, I have been portraying and documenting the stories of sex workers located in Norway, mostly in Oslo, but I have also traveled to Stavanger and Bergen. The project, as you will see, is a kind of hybrid between a documentary project, a collaborative portrait photography. It's a very informational project. I try to use the stories to provide information about the subject so that we can reduce the stigma. And in that way, maybe it's also an activist project, I have been told. So the project was originally planned as a book. I was going to give out a book with these stories and these portraits. And I thought it would be easier to give out the book, and then it would maybe be hard to get the gallery to want to exhibit it. But the opposite happened, and I have not managed to find anyone that wants to give out this book that I made. But I have exhibited it in Fotografiens Hus, which is the House of Photography in Oslo. I have exhibited it in the photo festival Oslo Negativ, the Skarpeteigen Gallery, which is a small gallery in Hardanger, and it hangs permanently, like a small version of it, hangs permanently in the reception of Prosentra. And Prosentra is the Oslo municipality center for where sex workers can come and receive, like, they can get condoms, they can get tested and talk to someone, and they also are like a center for competence on this field. And they and Peon are my collaborators, although I'm doing the project, so they are just giving me feedback on kind of doing it right. I've also been invited to Dukkfoto, which is a documentary photo festival in Oslo, to talk about it, and that's where I first had this talk. It was actually on 8th of March that I had it, so that was nice. Yeah. And I made a website for the project, which is called conversationsonsexandwork.com. And the reason I made it is that it was planned, I was going to give out this book, and then it's going to be an exhibition. But the opposite happened, and I didn't want to just put a gallery full of these beautiful images of sex workers, but no context. That would be silly. So I made QR codes to put under most of the pictures so that they could read their stories for like the first exhibition that I had. But I assumed I would be getting a book deal at some point, and that was just a temporary solution. And I don't think I can have this website up forever because it's, well, maybe someone will change their lives and feel bad about having their information there. So I'm going to have to take it down at some point. So if you want to read the stories, now's the time. You can go into this website. Okay, so background for the project. I wrote my MA about sugar dating some years ago. It's very interesting, but I don't think I have time to talk so much about that. I think it was about this time that I fell into this kind of rabbit hole on sex workers' rights and starting to think about how I can do a project in photography about it. Oh, this is the wrong way. There. And then there is stereotypical representation that I wanted to kind of fight. How can I fight this? And this image that you see here is the one that is most often used when the media writes something about sex work, either if it's positive or negative. It's kind of women leaning into a car and high heels. And I were like, okay, but sex workers exist every day, and how can I show them as more whole human beings? So this is what I wanted to do. And I also saw at the same period, I started to check, how does documentary photography look at this? And I found this horrendous image by a photographer called Maria Hall, who is really a good photographer. And when she does other subjects, she portrays her subject beautifully. But in this, she had made this portrait of this woman, Bonnie, while she's having sex with a customer. And it's extremely dehumanizing. It's horrible. And I just wanted to do something else than that. So, yeah. And the thing that really kind of ticks me or pisses me off in this, when it comes to this subject, is that the people that are my people, the feminists, the leftists, are the most bigoted on this subject, and they are the ones that are anti-rights. And I saw that, this was about in 2020, I saw that someone had torn apart this poster that says, "Sex workers are people, goddammit." And I just thought, this is, and I saw that also, I started to look in on it, and I saw that, okay, this is happening every year. This is, I need to do something about this. I need to try to change the discourse or something like that. Where am I? Yeah. Yeah, because, and also I have to comment that, I think that Kvinnefronten and Ottar and the people that are, this is the mainstream organizations in Norway that are anti-sex work and feminist, or they are feminist on every other case, but not sex work. They would say that, oh, but this was an outlier, this was a crazy person who attacked this person, but it's their rhetoric that makes this happen, and it happens every year. And I just also find it ironic that it is the very same politics that the feminists want and that we call it the Nordic model, that actually leads to violence, actual violence, bad violence against sex workers. So I think that this is totally okay to have this as a starting point for the project and like a rhetorical point. The project participants are co-artists and co-researchers of the project, and here you see two of the participants that have signed their print on the wall. One is Andy, and she is sending love, and the other is the dominatrix, what's her, she calls herself, Tantric Domina Callis Mercury, and Callis Mercury is sending hugs and specs. And yeah, I just want to say one thing. Epistemic injustice, it's a philosophical concept coined by Miranda Fricker in 2007. Epistemic injustice is when someone is harmed specifically in their capacity as knowers, in how their knowledge, experience, or credibility is received or denied by others. And I think that this term is perfect to understand how sex workers experiences. And I just want to say that I cannot provide this kind of epistemic justice, because for that, each person would have to make their own project. I can just work while having this in the back of my head, in the same way as a journalist has the ideal of objectivity, which everyone knows it's an impossible ideal, but you can work towards it. I think that when you work with a subject like this, you can think about epistemic injustice and just think, how can I avoid committing that? I'm probably going to do it in some, because I'm the one who is taking the pictures, selecting the pictures, and selecting what stories and how I talk about it. So it's not epistemic justice, but it's the best I can do. And I also gotten this, someone has said to me like, oh, it's so nice, you are giving them a voice. And I just want to say that all of these people have a voice. I'm not giving anyone a voice. If something, they are kind of giving me a voice so that I can further my career as a photographer and documentarist, but these people have a voice, I assure you. And I think, before I start to show you the pictures, I'm just going to give you some quotes from the participants, just to know what you're talking about. Many of the participants have defined what sex work is, but I'm using now Musa de la Luz's definition, that is, sex work is when you use the action of sex or the energy of sex or the idea of sex in exchange for a resource, be that money, a place to stay, a coat, or food. And this I'm just going to skip, because I also think the first presenter talked a lot about this. And this, I guess, it's already kind of covered. And my starting point, or like the thing that I wanted to fight with these portraits, was the stigma. And I've asked most of the participants have, or all of the participants have experienced stigma, and they have thoughts about stigma. So I'm just going to read a couple of quotes about stigma, and then you will start to see the pictures in the project. So Jeanette says, in newspaper articles, there are often stories like prostitutes are selling sex from some apartment. But then it turns out that these people are forced to be there. And in that case, it is no longer about sex work. I think that the media does not convey well enough that are also people who choose to do sex work. So I think that this is the main source of the stigma in today, like this conflation between sex work and trafficking. And then we have Musa de la Luz again, and she said the word prostitution is hard to get rid of because the word has been used for so long. It's a shitty word, and it's never used in a good line. It's always used in a derogatory way. It's always meant to imply criminality and the other, instead of a living, breathing human being trying to put food on the table. And then Alma on the hierarchy. There are many groups that try to erase strippers from history because of the stigma that we carry with us. But I think it's very unfair that us strippers should remain stigmatized while burlesque and pole are seen as liberating activities. And then it's Lilith. And Lilith says, being transqueer, you know, stigma and vulnerability, it does not increase in terms of 1 + 1 + 1, it increases exponentially. And this is kind of the intersectionality that she's talking about. And I'm starting with Lilith, that you just heard from. And I just want to say that the images on the screen here are not great, the color and it's not great, but the people that are watching online will see a better version. And just so you know, things are a bit fucked up with these images, but you can see them. And this is Lilith with glitter and seaweed holding her Hawaii sling. I think my original idea was like, because Lilith does free diving, so I wanted her in her diving suit, but she brought to the image her like spear that she used when diving, and the rest she kind of invented. And neither me nor Lilith saw this until we had printed this. We printed it quite big for the exhibition, and we didn't see that, you know, this, for anyone familiar with art history, this is kind of Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli. I think it's kind of a meta-commentary that just came into it, like Venus wanted to possess Lilith for this in order to tell us that goddesses, sex workers, art history has traveled through history together. And I know that Caitlin is going to be talking much more about this in her show later. And Lilith loves the filmatic universe of Disney. And since I have so many stories, I'm just going to skip this, but you can ask her afterwards about this tattoo when we have the Q&A. And here's a quote from Lilith. Lilith says, when people talk about financing transition, it's not just genital surgery they're talking about. It's breast surgery and body modification. It's life modification. You are making a radical change in your life, and you must have the finances. It also varies, of course, but some trans people need much more than I did. Too many people are not admitted treatment at the National Hospital, and they have to get hold of the money for surgery. So if there is one thing I would advise you to take with you from this talk, it is that sex workers do sex work first and foremost because we live in a capitalist society and we need money in order to live. But maybe there are some groups that are more represented under the red umbrella than others. And if you are a trans person and you can't get your treatment covered, maybe that is someone who's more often represented. If you are an entrepreneur that can't get your project started, maybe that is someone who's presented. Maybe if you're a single parent and you want to spend more time with your child, maybe that is also a reason why someone would do, because this is a work you can do with not education, and you will get paid good so that you can spend your energy on the other thing that you need to do. And then there's Danny. This one is called Danny with her horses in the blue hour. So he reached out to me late in the project. I had known him from before. I had him as a Facebook friend, but I had kind of forgotten that he was a sex worker. And this was actually the only person I knew from before I started working on this subject. And Danny was kind of famous a period. He was part of this echo porn collective called Fuck for Forest that I think it's 10 years ago or something like that. And a lot of people were ridiculing them, but I think they were kind of ahead of their time because this was before this porn revolution that has happened with OnlyFans and all of that. Yeah. And he says, they say, when you strip it down, it is of course about money. It's a real job, and this is why I want decriminalization, because it's risky. And Dani has experienced hate violence when they were working in Berlin. And Dani says also, you feel that you are doing an important job. For many people in our society who otherwise do not have an outlet for their sexual desires and who experience a lot of loneliness. So at the same time, Dani points out how doing sex work as an escort can be very meaningful for some. Yeah, I'm just gonna, and this, I think it was me who wanted to do the horse pictures because for me that was the idea of the project, like, who are you besides sex work? But Dani wanted to show the kind of more drag side of his personality, so he set up this. So I wanted to show both of these images. And this is Gabriel. And Gabriel funded his studies doing sex work. And I have quite, oh, there it is, yeah. I really felt it in the pandemic. I completely shut down the shop because I wanted to be responsible. For several months, I did absolutely nothing. But then, when it was finally possible to start meeting some clients again, and I started to need the money, and the customers started making contact, then I could feel that it wasn't the kissing or the sexual thing that was most important. It was the hug and the skin-to-skin feeling of touching each other, of feeling each other. And I could feel that they really needed to be touched, that they had been disconnected from others for so long. And Gabriel thinks that sex work is a form of care work. And he also thinks that sex workers are probably very sensitive people. And I think what he points at is, this emotional labor is very, like, a big part of what sex workers do. So it is a form of work that I think can be compared with what nurses do, or psychologists do, or social workers do. So if someone has a hard time relating, okay, well, I think many people think that sex work is only about this bodily activity that we call sex, but it seems to me that it's so much more than that. And maybe the bodily activity is maybe the least important sometimes. This is Maria Nebula, she calls herself. We wanted to take a portrait of her while she was holding her baby, because sex workers are also parents. But when I exhibited it, I chickened out and I didn't use this picture because I was so scared for her kind of safety and that someone would report her to social services. But she is insisting she wants to use this image. But I used this one because, and I also love this picture. It's called Maria Nebula in Window Light because of the confrontational look she has, but it's not aggressive. It's just, I'm here. Let me see, what have I? Yeah, and she says, in the beginning, I just wanted the physical part and the excitement. But then it evolved, and it gradually became about something more, something deeper than that. And I began to educate myself on sexuality and healing. So for Maria Nebula, this was, at the beginning, just a way of exploring her sexuality and having fun. But it became, she decided she wanted to do it her career, and she is now working as a body worker and a dominatrix. And now we have Bjørnar, perhaps the most unlikely sex worker. And he says, people who have a lot of control in their work and in life otherwise, they love to be able to let go of that control. Because for them, it becomes a mental free zone. And this is a cliche. But cliches come into existence because there is a basis for them. And Bjørnar took me crab fishing. And this was kind of the best picture I managed to take in that bit of seasick experience I had. But since Bjørnar uses ropes in his sex work, I think it's a good picture. He does shibari, and his story is kind of, he was doing this shibari, this Japanese bondage technique, and he was photographing it and sharing it on social media. And then so many women contacted him and said, do you want a model? That he realized that, oh, I can maybe charge for this. And Bjørnar also does tantric massage And he told me that he has some clients, female clients that had experienced violence and were kind of using his services in order to be safe again with men. Yeah, and I also just want to mention he is about in his 50s, he has a wife, he has kids, he has another firm. He's the thing about gender, when I was working with this project and I told people, yes, I'm about to meet a sex worker, and if it was a woman, people would have this look like, oh, poor, like it's almost feel sorry for me for meeting those poor victims. But when I told people, yeah, no, it's a man, I'm meeting a man and he's doing this, they're just like, whoa, how can he do this? And it's like, no, it's like they don't believe that this person even could exist. And he is so privileged to be able to do this work. But if you're a woman, you're a victim. So I just wanted to comment on that. And this is Tantric Domina, Callis Mercury, doing yoga in her studio. And I'm going to explain to you after why I have severely destroyed this image. It was one of the biggest printed image in the first exhibition, and I think she was really proud of the image, and I was too. You can kind of meet her look in the mirror there. She's a dominatrix, and she wanted to do yoga and meditate in the place where she does her work. And yeah, she came to Norway to do her MA in neuroscience, and she wrote about the therapeutic benefits of pain. So if you ever have a sex worker with an education, here is one. And she's, yeah, you see where she's posing. She's posing in her studio. And she wrote to me this spring. She said, my very reason for being a part of this project, battling the stigma against sex work, has now cut me off from a possibility to have a safe home and a space to work and recover. So what happened was that she was moving, because she was getting divorced, and she was moving to a new apartment. And she had already signed the contract and everything. And in the last minute, the landlord told her that you can't, I don't dare to rent to you, you can't rent here. And for context, the police had this Operation Homeless around, what was it, from 2007 to 2011, that targeted apartments used for sex work by pressuring landlords to evict tenants under the so-called pimping law. Hundreds of sex workers, mostly migrant women, lost their homes, often with little or no notice. Of course, the operation increased vulnerability and danger for sex workers without reducing trafficking or exploitation. And similar tactics continue today through police enforcement of the pimping law against landlords. So in this case, the police, of course, was not involved, and police, I don't think she even does the type of work that is criminalized. But even so, the landlord did not dare to rent to her. And I think my presentation is really long, so I think I'm going to, okay. And Callis says, one of the reasons why I started with the work is because I love to travel. And it gives me an opportunity to make money wherever I go. I started, yeah, I'm just going to let you read the rest of this. As you can see, Callis has traveled a lot, and she has really enjoyed her travels that she has managed to do through this work, that she finds really interesting work. And I just want to comment this thing about travel, because in Norway we have this kind of, probably in Iceland too, you have this kind of self-image of being explorers and travelers, and you travel and you see the world. But when we talk about people from Latin America or Asia or like other places in the world, we see only this kind of poor person that wants to travel off because they're always longing back to their village, and la la la. Callis is not from a village. And in the book Sex at the Margins, anthropologist Laura Maria Augustine points out how assuming that those that we think of as others only travel out of misery, or that they are trafficked, of course. Yeah, and this is racist and paternalistic, of course. In reality, most sex workers that travel are not trafficked. Many, like Callis, choose mobility as a way to earn money, find freedom, and explore the world on their own terms. And speaking of trafficking, this is Dante, and he says, when I came to Norway, I was working for almost 4 months in the construction industry, and I didn't get paid at all. All I got was a place to sleep and food. And I got very frustrated. I worked every day from 7. And you know, the construction industry is very tricky. You can be finished at 10 in the night, and it's fucking hard. And one day I got very frustrated because if I don't have money, I go crazy. And I came to Norway to have a future. If not, I would have stayed in my mother's house. And that night, somebody offered a very big sum of money just to fuck me. And in that moment, I started my sex work career. This is Dante. This is Dante with a chicken on his shoulder. I came to take a picture of his cat, actually, but then he had a chicken, and I couldn't, it was just, I had to take this picture. He really loves animals. So yeah, to start, trafficking is a juridically contested term, since it's unclear what counts as trafficking. Is it forced labor, people smuggling, sexual exploitation, or violence? What are we talking about when we are talking about trafficking? And scholars in the field of law are, of course, disagreeing about this. But put aside those philosophical considerations, what Dante experienced in the construction industry clearly qualifies as trafficking under the Palermo Protocol. In fact, exploitation of this kind is widespread in construction, in domestic work, and in agricultural industries. What have I written here? Yeah. So many people, when we talk about trafficking, they assume that we talk about the sex industry. But as I mentioned, I think we have some statistics on this. It's difficult to make statistics on this, but it's like less than 10% of people that travel to Europe to work in the sex industry that are exploited and trafficked. So it's a misconception. It is also not uncommon for people escaping this kind of exploitation, either if it's in the construction industry or the sex industry, to do so by entering the sex industry, and sometimes they even leave exploitation within the sex industry itself by moving to safer or more autonomous work arrangements as sex workers. Am I talking too fast? Yeah? Okay. So, and regarding that, Francesca says, I got out of the situation on my own. After that, I took back my pride and became an independent escort. So I created a website, I did cool photo shoots, treated my customers with respect, and so on. Francesca on escaping organized crime. So Francesca's story is complex. The first thing that happened was that she was really sick, and then she tried to get help from the Norwegian government. She couldn't get help. She became homeless, so she started just coming home with men to have a place to sleep. And it was then that she decided, oh, maybe I should start selling sexual services. And she did, and this way she managed to save up for a deposit that the government should have given her in order to have a safe place to live. Later on, because she was still not well, like it was mentally, she was not okay, she was exploited by a pimp. Yeah, this situation she also had to get out of on her own because the police wouldn't help her. I feel like her story is kind of out of a Dickens novel, but it's really important for her to say that she has so good memories of the times when she was doing sex work after that, when she became a professional escort, and she has so much pride in that. Yeah, and she wanted to be, I forget to talk about the pictures themselves, but she wanted to be naked in nature, as many others in the project, for some reason. And this is Andy. And Andy says, I got interrogated in my own apartment. They didn't give me a lawyer. And then they took me to the police station and made me sign some papers. And they sent me to Trandum. And in about an hour and a half from when I got there, they had already given me the paperwork that said I had to leave the country. Andy on being deported after living 8 years in Norway, even though she had not violated any laws. And this was during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, the police... So to be clear, there was a short period under the pandemic when it became illegal in Oslo to do in-person sex work. And he was not deported in this period. It was a year later that the police was doing this. And they did it not only to Andy, but a lot of other sex workers. Maybe they had been looking to find a way to throw them out of the country, and now they had a reason. And I can't even imagine, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how many human rights violations had been committed here. She had lived 8 years in Norway. I met her a year after. She came back to pick up her things and her dog that she was not allowed to take with her because she was so quickly thrown out. She also said that at the time when this happened, she had just been offered a job as a masseuse, and she was about to kind of legalize herself with her work. This whole thing that happened, of course, depleted her financial, like whatever savings were, and it was a catastrophe for her. Yeah, just one effect of the Nordic model. And this is Luna. And Luna says, when I've discussed finances with friends and they have found out how little I receive in benefits, they have been completely shocked, because it is obvious that it is impossible to support oneself on that. And due to my health, I can't hold down a regular job. So the fact that I can work with this means that I have the opportunity to work after all. And I am very proud of that. This is Luna with her red snake. So for Luna, who is autistic, in addition to having other health problems, doing online sex work is both a rational choice in her economic situation and an empowering one. Her health limits her in such a way that traditional employment is impossible. But her online sex work, conducted from her own premises, allows her to earn an income on her own terms. Many people assume that Norway has this perfect welfare system. And while, of course, it is really strong compared to most countries, it has a lot of gaps. And I don't think it meets the needs of the people that really needs this. I'm sure it doesn't. And it's just really important to keep this context in mind when we talk about sex work, when we talk about, and I'm going to relate. This is Kitty Asura. And I like this picture because it's such like an innocent pin-up pose that she does there. And her story underscores the same structural issues as does Luna's. After experiencing relational violence, she encountered a welfare system that failed to protect her. She received no support or follow-up and became homeless. Over time, she stopped expecting help from the authorities, and she chose to get rid of most of her belongings and travel abroad just with a suitcase, funding herself through online sex work, camming. For Kitty, sex work was not only a means of survival, but also to reclaim autonomy, explore her identity, and develop her artistic and performative skills. So she created this persona, Kitty Asura, in order kind of to protect herself after what she had experienced. But in time, herself kind of merged with Kitty Asura, and she's now come back to Norway and found community and is healing from this. But as the same with Francesca, she should have received some support. And she says, it is much easier to fall through in the school system, for example, as a neurodivergent. But at the same time, because that tendency towards extreme pattern recognition, the way that you think and reflect, makes you see so much more possibilities. Neurotypical people would never think of selling their panties when they were broke. So, yeah, same as Luna, and I think Francesca and many of the others, she's neurodivergent. And Kitty discovered in her travel that this is just so common that it's almost the exception to not be neurodivergent among sex workers. And I couldn't find good research on this, like unstigmatizing research, of course, because research both in the field of neurodivergence and sex work is stigmatizing, but I think that Kitty Asura has an interpretation here that we don't need anything else. And this is my Christina, who says, because of my online sex work, I now have a more conscious relationship with my sexuality. So for my Christina, engaging in online sex work is about fun, pleasure, and self-expression, not money. She creates content to explore her sexuality and connect with the community, using platforms like Fansly as a space for creativity and enjoyment. She compares the wheelchair with creating online content because her wheelchair is kind of something that she gets infantilized for, just patted on the head and, oh, you're so brave, this kind of thing. But the wheelchair empowers her. She has an illness that makes it possible to her to leave the wheelchair, but she has so much exhaustion, I think, that she needs it. And she compares it with her kind of online tools for doing sex work, because these are also things that really do empower her and helps her to explore her sexuality, while people infantilize her for it and think that she's not capable of taking her own choices. And Alexa, I just chose this really short one because it's, I think we have still this, it's been this idea of this pornographer who is a man, is really sleazy and is making women come and do, like, become porn actresses and prostitutes, and it's all horrible. But today we have all these apps, and most people that does porn are entrepreneurs that do this on their own terms. So it's kind of happened a revolution here. Power has shifted, but I don't think the narrative has followed this power shift. Yeah. She also likes it in the woods. She gets calm in the woods, and I really love this. This is one of my favorites. It's like, oh, it looks so nice. Yeah. And this is Musa de la Luz in her costume before her performance at Vigeland's mausoleum. Musa came to Norway because she had been admitted a place at the theater school. So this was her final exam performance that she did in the mausoleum. And she says, if you go and see a performance of mine and you get moved, even if I'm just dancing, I hope that I move someone. And even if it's just a horny move, I made you feel something. And that's what I like to do. Also, I made you feel something. Also, if I made you feel something that you didn't like, I still did it. I made you feel something. And that's my job as an artist. So for Musa de la Luz, sex work and artistic practice are deeply intertwined. She approaches sex work in the form of dance as a form of artistic expression, while her performances and creative portraits often draw on her experiences with sex work. And another dancer. Diego actually performed at the opening of my exhibition. I should actually have brought the video from there. I didn't think about it until now. His education is as a professional ballet dancer, and then he got a knee injury so that he couldn't work as that. And he got really depressed, of course. And then he discovered pole dance kind of by accident, and he now works as a stripper and with pole dance, and I think he's in some kind of championships internationally. So it looks really good when he dances. And he says, I got back the joy of dancing, and I never thought I could get that feeling back. Oh, it's approaching. Maybe I should, how long can I? 20 minutes. Yeah, I can talk more than after, because I started later than, yeah. Alma with a kitten that she saved. Alma is engaged in animal welfare. And when Alma grew up, she idolized pop stars like Shakira, and she was fascinated by women who were sexy, strong, and charismatic, but she never thought that she could embody that. But now she kind of faced her dancing fears, and she works as a stripper. And she also runs a booking agency for strippers in Norway, aiming to improve working conditions while continuing to perform herself. And she says, I wish I could just be, and just make people feel good, and just dance. But in this society, I am forced to work. And then at least I can do it and have professional pride in being a stripper. Best of both worlds, right? We can have a longer perspective on things like work and capitalism, but at the same time be proud here and now of the work that we do. And there's a reason why this project is named Conversations on Sex and Work, not Sex Work, because I think that sex workers have a lot to say about how we organize our whole lives around work, like the Protestantic ideals about work. And I think that while the slogan is sex work is work, it's very often also anti-work. It's a way of escaping the 9 to 5. And Ishtar Astaroth says, to feel alive and to be able to get a break from the monotonous capitalist cyberpunk dystopia that we live in, which is very work and product focused. Everything we do is framed through the understanding that we should produce, not about living or enjoying. So even though sex work is work, it is also a type of sacred space that exists beyond the productive. You spend time, you spend energy, you use your own body to create an erotic experience that is not about producing anything other than a physical experience that only exists in the moment. And I don't think I have time to tell the whole story about this performer. and queer dominatrix. They have the same philosophy as Musa about sex work and artwork kind of merging. And their story is very fascinating, and you can go to the website and read it if you want. Lulu. In the same time as I have been working with this project, Lulu has transitioned. And harkening back to what Lilith talked about at the beginning, she financed this with sex work. When I first met her, she was presenting as a man, because I was working for so many years with this, so I had to take new pictures of her. And by the time I took these new pictures, she had changed her mind. In the beginning, she wanted to be open, but then she changed her mind because she had realized how this overlapping stigma of being trans and a sex workers was quite maybe too much for her, which is understandable. So I took this picture of her in this chador that is very colorful. She's from Syria. She had experienced being outed, which many of the others also have experienced, which is devastating. It's dangerous to out someone who doesn't want to be out. And in this case, it was quite bad. And she says, you know, I had an OnlyFans, right? So someone took the pictures, they took videos, they took links and videos in all the escort sites and put it out on Facebook. And they sent friend requests to the whole family, to the extended family, not just to mom and dad. I went to the police and reported it, but they did nothing. Again, this thing, the police doing nothing when it comes to what really matters. And this is the front page of the book that nobody wants to give out. So it's called Sana Swimming in the Lake. And harkening back to the health, to what you were talking about, she began doing sex work after leaving an abusive relationship, initially exploring sugar dating and later escorting as a way to reclaim her sexual agency, intimacy, and trust. And it also provided financial independence. But when she tried to discuss this with her psychologist, the psychologist, she had gone to a psychologist for a time to work on the abusive relationship she's been in. And then she thought, okay, maybe I should tell this psychologist that I'm doing escorting. And this psychologist was just so, totally repulsed and shocked and just, you are going to have to see this, you have more serious problems than I thought, and I can't see you anymore, and you have to go and see, you need serious support. This was the reaction that she had. And she says about sex work, after I came out of an abusive relationship, I didn't want to be emotionally involved with anyone because it traumatized me. But if I could be close to men through sex work, be close to people, and slowly but surely feel and really understand that things are going to go well and have good experiences, then slowly but surely I could open myself up to the emotional side of it. And lately, I've also learned a lot about setting boundaries. Being in a situation and saying clearly and loudly no and yes is something that it becomes much more obvious that you need to do when you are doing sex work, because you cannot go into a customer situation and not be sure what your yes and your no are. So many have talked about boundaries and how sex work has either taught them about setting boundaries, or they have just pointed out how this is really a necessary skill for a sex worker. I think this is important because a lot of the prejudice around sex work from the radical feminists is this idea of, oh, they have such a boundless sexuality. This is a person that don't respect themselves and have boundaries. And in fact, I'm repeatedly hearing the opposite. And many of the people I've spoken to have kind of taught me about setting boundaries, commenting that, oh, because boundaries has to do with much more than sexuality. It's about a lot of things. And they taught me a lot about that. So yeah, okay. So this is Jeanette, who wanted to go mountain climbing, and I was supposed to be climbing with her and holding my camera and taking this picture, but I did not take this picture, in fact. It was her friend. Her friend was a climbing instructor and was supposed to help me to dare to go down there, but I just gave her my camera and she took this picture. So it's collaborative photography, so it's okay. And Jeanette says, I wanted to explore my sexuality, but it's definitely money that motivates me the most. And maybe in a world like this, where you have to have money to live. And I just can't imagine working that 24/7 life, that struggle. So it's just a good alternative to that kind of life. And I also want to live. I want to live comfortably. And I don't want to have to depend on an employer or a relationship. So, yeah, this is kind of the same thing as Ishtar was talking about, and Alma and many of the others. It's work, but it's also a rejection of work. It's a rejection of Protestantism and this idea of working all the time. And yeah. She has worked abroad. She doesn't want to say where, but she says, where I used to live, it's illegal for both parties. So screening clients is more common and possible then. It is easier to stay safe because both are doing something illegal. And it's much more common to receive a picture of an ID or a link to a profile and things like that. While if you're trying to do this here, you will not get any clients. So she says she doesn't screen. She can't screen. Yeah, she explains here exactly how dangerous client criminalization is. It's actually more dangerous than being criminalized yourself. And this is Elijah. Elijah, another one that they really enjoy nature, these people. It's an easy job as a photographer because it's beautiful to take pictures of people in nature. And Elijah likes to dance, and here she's dancing by a river. And I forgot to mention that I'm using analog camera, so I can't see what I'm just trying out. I wanted to kind of make her anonymized by having a long shutter speed. But I thought, when I saw it afterwards, I couldn't check it while I was working. I thought I made her disappear a little bit too much here, so I didn't use this image. And yeah, she says that sex work has been therapeutically healing, providing her with emotional safety and a reassurance of being wanted. The experience of being paid for her company has helped her process past experiences and care for herself emotionally, similar to how engaging in kink and other forms of self-expression can have restorative effects. Elijah also compared aspects of sex work to therapy, helping others while being mindful of its psychological demands. And she says, the first time it's a bit of a cliche and embarrassing to admit it, but it's like the pretty woman narrative. Arriving at that hotel where they open the door for me, there's a dress for me, we're going out to eat, there's a spa, there's everything. And for a 20-year-old girl who is not used to luxury, it's fun, it's a kick. But Elijah, I think she's another one of those neurodivergent ones, because soon after the dancing, she climbed a tree, so I didn't have time to kind of figure out how to make this a good image. But she has experienced violence as a sex worker, and I don't want to get into the details. But it was a group rape, and the plan had been to meet only one man, someone she trusted, and she came into a hotel room, and this was not the case. And she says, so that's what happened to me. But what happened afterwards is that it was no point in telling anybody. I was not going to receive any justice. Since money was involved, I would have lost that court case. And I just had to cut it short. And she says, we need to get legal protection. Because it is still the case that if you are subjected to violence and abuse when you are selling sex, then people can say, well, you got paid for it. But I didn't get paid for that. I got paid for the other thing over here, which was a totally different deal. And she also has this quote that, like, since she was doing sex work out of, like, kind of childish curiosity, she would have been even worse victim blamed if she had tried to do something about this in the court system or even talk about it. And I just want to mention that today Elijah has worked through what happened to her in therapy, and she is doing fine. And regarding to this thing with sexual violence and sex workers, I've spoken to the people that work at Pro-Centra, and they're kind of pissed off, some of them, I think, because when migrants come to them and they have experienced violence, or maybe they have been robbed, they can't go to the police because, one, if they rent, the police will tell the landlord they will lose the place to live. Two, maybe they don't have their papers in order, and then they will be deported, like Andy was. So because of this, not only doesn't the people that do this violence and like violent criminals they don't get, we don't get justice. And as a society, this is also dangerous because we let violent criminals go free because of this. So it's not only about the people, it's also like, as a society, this is really bad. Yeah. And I'm sorry that I'm ending on such a kind of negative vibe. Finally, in this image, it's part of the dancing series. I saw that she has completely disappeared. And it had too much symbolic potential for me not to use it in this talk, harkening back to what I said about epistemic injustice. So let's stop making sex workers disappear, and let us instead regard sex workers as the experts on their own experiences and on this subject in general, since that is what they are. And when we make policy that is going to affect the lives of sex workers, let us remember this. And I wrote a little conclusion for the 8th of March thing. The 8th of March, where I was invited to talk, it was called, what was it called? What is the revolution? Who is the revolution for? Or something like that. What do we own if not our bodies? That was kind of the name of the dog photo thing where I first talked about this. And so since I'm autistic too, I take everything literally. So I had to like provide an answer to this question. So I did, and I said, it is in the name of feminism and goodness that we systemically violate the human rights of sex workers, putting them at risk of exploitation and violence. So, to answer the question of who the revolution is for, assuming we are talking about the feminist revolution, it certainly does not belong to the women who, with the law in hand, control what other women can do with their own bodies. And as I've seen, there are countless reasons people choose sex work. And as in any capitalist society, money is a central element. If we want to reduce those who enter sex work out of desperation, we must fight for economic equality, both between genders and globally. In the meantime, decriminalization of all forms of sex work is urgently necessary, because the police and the punitive state are not allies of marginalized groups. Thank you. Yeah, I made this, over here you have this, you can go to this, to my website and buy my prints, but I have only put a few pictures in it. I have a lot from other projects that I worked on that I'm going to put in there, and you will support me if you buy my work. It's kind of expensive, so if you want to buy me a coffee instead, you can go to my tip jar. That is over here. Yeah. Yeah, now Lilith is, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, what an incredible ending. I mean, while we stand here today, we celebrate community and solidarity and knowledge. We also stand with the knowledge that we are walking in the footsteps of all of the sex workers that have come before us, and now I'm going to cry, people who have lived and died, to make sure that we've gotten this far. We haven't gotten far enough, but we've gotten this far. And that's so important to remember. So not a depressing ending, a really important ending. And now we're going to go straight into a Q&A with Lilith and with Iselin Kristiansen, who was incredible. And I have so many questions, but I will share the mic. So thank you both.
I'm going to put this hopeful picture behind us when we talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Totally fine. If you're
Right.
good with this image being on, are you okay with this image?
Yes. Yes. It's the front page. Yeah.
I can start with a question.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I noticed some of these like common themes emerging of the pride of being sex worker, of sex work as a creative outlet, of neurodivergence and disability, and and of selling sex to escape exploitative and abusive situations. So I'm wondering if any of these themes that emerged surprised you in the course of this project, or surprised you in organizing with sex workers, you know, if there anything else came up that was really surprising.
At the beginning, when I was working, I was like, I didn't think it's so much spirituality among sex workers. I didn't expect this. It was constant. This kind of person, this being in nature shows us that, and then this kind of spiritual person that is into tarot and astrology, and their work is healing work, and it's like almost everyone says this. And I had as a starting point this thing that kind of Marxist view that this is about the material. I had read the book that maybe many of you have read called Revolting Prostitutes by Mackin Smith, and this was kind of my starting point in my view. But then when everyone is talking about this healing and spirituality, I can't just erase that. That would be very bad if I was going to be collaborative. So this surprised me, I think.
Yeah, I think it's always a good point to think about. What is the manner of which you entered into this work, and what are the circumstances? Because, of course, there are stories where people have a really bad experience with sex work, and that colors their entire point of view of that. And they should be allowed to have that experience and not want to be a sex worker ever again. But also, I really do believe that when you approach sex work from a sex-positive way, and when you engage with the sex worker community in a meaningful way, you gain knowledge about sex and your own body and your own autonomy. And you gain experiences that positively affect your entire life. Not just as a sex worker, but as a whole person. I think that's very meaningful, and it very much shows in this project that, sex workers are very spiritual people and very nature and freedom-oriented people, and I think it comes from a point of being marginalized, being on the edges, and finding together in a situation where you're searching for something about yourself and being denied it in the rest of society.
I think it also goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, like it goes back in history that Caitlin is talking about, I know, is in her show. It goes so far back to these ancient temples and sex workers being actually our priests and our healers and the experts on fertility and everything like that. And then they were burnt as witches in the Middle Ages. And it's the same population. I think it's the one that weren't burned.
Yeah, I mean, sex inherently has very strong feelings connected to it. So you are working with very, very strong emotions. So of course you're going to feel something magical in there. And I don't mean that as a funny ha-ha sex is magical thing, but in an actual, religions and spirituality all through the ages have inherently seen that there is magic in your sexual emotions and how you approach your sexuality. And it's an important thing to acknowledge. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have more questions?
I just wanted to know, I can probably say it loud enough.
Have you thought about self-publishing the book, since nobody else seems to be?
Yeah, I don't have money to do that. So
everyone saw the QR code, right?
Yeah, I can bring it back at the end so that you will have a chance to make sure that you have it. And also, like my experience as an artist, having exhibition, to have a curator that says, "Oh, this is a good one. This one we should leave out. These go together." And I've never written a book. I would like to have an editor. And of course, I could pay an editor and self-publish. And maybe it will be done in the end. There was one thing I forgot to say, and it is that since I kind of get a bit pissed that I can't get a publisher, so I said after I had the exhibition and the whole thing should have been finished, I said on my social media, I'm not finishing this until I have the book, so I will keep collecting these stories and this portrait until I have the book. And now, since I want to expand it to other places affected by the Nordic model, so this is a little bit my plan for the next days, but I haven't planned with anyone particular yet. But you can just come to me if you want to. Yeah.
Your book is going to be longer than Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I want to expand on that. I think the thing about not only self-publishing, but like doing stuff yourself that you should receive funds from external places. It is something that is very common for a lot of people. Well, if I can't get so-and-so government fund to do it for me, or if I can't get so-and-so service there and there, I'll just do it myself and fund it myself. And it's like I was talking about in the project about transitioning as a trans person, that these things cost a lot of money. And if you are, if you're part of a family that supports you, great. If you're part of a community that are able and willing to give you those resources, great. And I think that is mostly the case for most of the world even. But when you're living on the fringes, when you are part of a minority that have been excluded, that might not always be the situation. And when you have to build up resources that you usually get from a whole community by yourself, that takes a lot of work. And then you realize why people do sex work and why people often pressure themselves to endure sex work. And when they're done enduring that, and when they get what they come for, then a lot of people still continue, but they no longer endure it. They thrive in it. Yeah, do we have another question?
Yes. So you mentioned spirituality and how, surprisingly or not, many sex workers seem to be very spiritual people. In the previous parts of this conference, in the previous panel, we discussed a lot about the practical matters of sex work and the nature of economic coercion under capitalism. But by mentioning spirituality now, and also how historically sex workers have been priestesses in ancient times and the persecuted witches in the Middle Ages, and now we have this very different political discourse where sex workers are seen as victims that the Nordic model aims to save through the end demand approach. I wonder, and it's just occurring to me, whether it might be possible and whether you have thought that it might actually be the power of sex that people are afraid of, because sex is older than us, it is bigger than us. Sex is thousands of years of revolution. Sex has literally created us. We can look at the sky for creators, for a creator that made us, but what we surely know has created us is sex. And as a sex worker, one harnesses that power, the power of sexuality, to evoke feelings in others, either through dance, like Musa said, or through in-person work. And do you ever feel that that people are actually trying to disempower sex workers as opposed to save them from violence?
Yeah, that's kind of what they really do. It's a kind of witch hunt. Like,
yeah, yeah. In a world without money or social stigma, we would be gods. Like, we create recreate something so strong that it reverberates through you by hours or even days after you first felt it, and to a certain extent it creates life. It creates life. We are gods.
I just want to say, I think that artists and sex workers has a very similar status in capitalism. I think I read this, it's not my own thoughts, but it's like, it's this thing that it should be, like, even if capital is in everything, it's, you know, it's part of, it's the whole structure of everything. You can't go away from money. Money, we have to think about money at all times. We see, like, art and sex are things that should not be kind of prostituted. So artists often kind of use this terminology also, and you shouldn't be a sellout and this kind of thing. So I think, yeah, there are so many similarities between the artist and the sex worker.
We have, like, when talking about sex work, you always have to look at the practical side of it. Like, what are the actual stuff that's happening? What are the actual consequences for this and this and this? But also, what are the grander, more spiritual, more, shall we say, higher sense of self stuff that you're discovering? And I think the fact that you are able to discover such a high sense of spirituality and self-worth within sex work, it does not diminish the lived experiences of people who are exploited and have horrible histories to tell, but it does shed a light that that sex work has positive possibilities, and to then reduce it to just trafficking and exploitation is to deny the world and people with sex work possibilities, to deny possibilities to the world, I would say. Yeah.
Can I say something? I had, while I was working on it, people have, like, took me aside, acquaintances and people I met, especially there was one woman who had never told, this is not a participant in the project, but she just told me, I want to tell you something. You know, there was a period I did what you call sex work because there was no, same, our famous welfare state is not working. It's really not working. That is a huge point. So she was in a situation where she couldn't take care of herself and her child, and she had a customer that she met regularly, and she hated it intensely. It was disgusting, and she would never call herself a sex worker. But she is positive to my project. But this is, so I think that there are some people who, it's like being an artist. You have something in you, and some people would then go on to say, oh, no, this was a great experience. I want to do this again. So it depends on this. So, like, I want to explore this and become a professional. People are different. So some of us are plumbers, some of us are artists. It's different things that we are good at. Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have other questions? Yes.
So you just mentioned a little bit about that with how people were reacting to your work, but I'm curious, like, because you mentioned you have exhibitions and also just with the website and on social media, are there any photos or subjects that have, like, you see a trend where people are reacting in a certain way or something that surprised you? Or have there been reactions that surprised you, if you want to speak a little bit to that?
Like reactions from people seeing it?
Yeah, either in an exhibition or just people's reactions to your work after looking at it online. Like, not necessarily just hearing about your work, but actually going and looking at your images and reading.
Well, I got a PDF from the House of Photography after the exhibition, and they had written down people's reactions. And it was, people have spent much more time in the exhibition than they normally do, because I've written a book on the wall, so they have to take their time. But a lot of people said that they had actually changed their view on the subject, and that they had known someone who was a sex worker, but that they had never understood this person. But after this, after reading this and seeing this, they understood more. So I think I have had, for the I just exhibited this in a gallery, and it hasn't had a huge impact on society because I haven't been given that platform. But for the few people that have seen it, as I understand it, for many people it has changed their views, and they have learned about this and changed. I think this. So it was what I wanted, kind of. Yeah.
I would say you absolutely have had an effect, because every person in society that a sex worker interacts with is a potential person who has some amount of power in that sex worker's life, whether it is to out them, or to do horrible things to ruin their life, or to empower them, or to, be a functional member of society and just do their job as intended. And every time a sex worker goes to a health professional and meets stigma, that is a person that is never going to see a health professional again. That's a person that's going to share that experience with other people in their community. And those people are not going to see a health professional again. Every person who meets a police officer or a social worker and is to talk about crime that's happened to them, and meets stigma there, they're not going to report any more crime. And that is crime that is allowed to happen in society. And that has an effect. So when people learn how to see sex workers, how to interact with sex workers and meet them in a human way, that's a positive change. And that's a net positive for society as a whole.
So I found it very interesting that many of the first images you showed were of male sex workers, and that's a demographic that's like really erased and even denied, with the common rhetoric around sex work that's often like women in prostitution, selling women's bodies aren't commodities, So I'm wondering if is that an intentional choice to kind of like put these male men, whatever, on the forefront?
At the talk, you mean? Yeah. I didn't think about it actually, but it was just the way that. But that was a good idea, actually. Yeah.
Collaborators.
It was very important to find men for the project because I wanted to show that men are also sex workers, of course. And this story of Bjørnar, it really flips the narrative. I love that it's that is in the project.
Yeah, and it really, I think it also really highlights the very strangling gender conformities we see in society today, that mainstream feminism very much does not approach with good intentions, because you still see gender stereotypes that women are expected to conform to, i.e. Hating sex workers and being victims of prostitution. And you see gender stereotypes that men are supposed to conform to, i.e. very extremely out there and talking and bragging about what they do, and also not being a sex worker. And when you dig down in the sex worker community, you see that it's more diverse, that men can also be sex workers. Men can have a positive sharing financial sexuality. Women can also be, financial consumers of sex workers' services. And I think that the way this challenge and evolve gender stereotypes and evolve what gender can mean and gender roles can be, I think that also is a positive change for society as a whole. That, neither women, men, or other gender types need to conform to this or that. Do we have any final questions or thoughts? I see we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I've been in contact with sex worker community here, of course, and so I have some people that might, but now you've seen what it is, so you can make an informed choice if there's anyone in this room that would like to. I have Sunday and Monday, it's the 2 days I have, so I would have time for maybe 2 or 3 stories from Iceland. I have applied for funding to expand the project to other places with the Nordic model, but so far I have not succeeded in getting funding. So it might be that I will just, okay, I will add these Icelandic stories, but I won't be able to expand it. I want to go to Sweden and Ireland and other places with the Nordic model, but I don't know if it will be possible, but I'm here now. Yeah. And I can also maybe put the QR codes for you to like have an extra look at them. You can also follow me on Instagram if you want updates. If it's ever a book, I will probably say it on Instagram. It's Unbearable Lightness, kind of poetic little Instagram there. Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
Any final thoughts or questions? No? Okay. Thank you for the Q&A. Incredible work. I studied photography at university. I also do analog. Yeah. What a great opportunity to be able to pick your brain about the project and to hear from people who are the experts in their fields. So thank you very much.
Can I also say, take you to, because Lilith was the first one who participated in the project, and she helped me like decide how it was going to be. And she also was very, very helpful when I was going to hang. It was these huge pictures for this exhibition. and Lilith really helped with this. She has been yeah, she's really a all of them are, but yeah. Just want to say that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
We do what we must because we can.
Yes, yeah. We gotta work together. Amazing work. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna have another 15 to 20 minute break, and then we will have our second panel of the day starting at 4:30. So thank you again to Iselin and to Lilith, and we will see you in 20 minutes. Yes.
Thank you.
So cool.
Thank you.